Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting, Tuesday, March 4th. I'm going to call our meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. We're going to start with a moment of silent reflection. But before we do that, the last month has brought unimaginable changes to our world, from an unprecedented attack on international law to great assaults on human rights, and with the announcement of tariffs today on Canada that threaten to plunge us into an economic recession. I want to acknowledge and thank all leaders of all the different levels of government in Canada for standing up for Canada in these unprecedented times. So please join us in reflecting on these changes, on these challenges, and in sending them much strength and resilience in these very difficult times. Thank you. Moving on to our land acknowledgement, the municipality of Port Hope exists on the lands of the Mississauga, Anishinaabe traditional territory covered by the Williams Treaties. We honor and recognize First Peoples as rights holders and stewards of the lands and waters on which we have the privilege to live, work, and play, including the Ganaraska Forest and River. We pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We commit to actions towards truth and reconciliation by recognizing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, strengthening ties with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, especially those who make their home in Port Hope, and learning from Indigenous ways of knowing and being. We do so by recognizing the past and working towards a shared future. Moving on to item number 2, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? I note that none were received in advance of this meeting. Moving on to item number 3, 3.1, petition, Anne Zakarchuk and Michael Walton regarding ZBO1 2024 276 to 282 Victoria Street North. Today, we have a petition for consideration related to a matter that is on the agenda, item 4.6. Importantly, significantly, this is the first petition we have received that aligns with the petition policy, and we are pleased to see that the community is engaging with council using the various tools of communication that we have established through our procedural bylaw. Does anyone have any comments or questions related to this petition? We will be discussing this item later on in the meeting. And can I get a mover and seconder to receive this correspondence for information? Councillor Darrell is the mover, Deputy Mayor is seconder. Can I get a vote on the matter? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on to item number 4, items for consideration, 4.1, report CS0425 regarding annual local board and committee reports 2024. Does staff have anything further that they would like to add before council considers this report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In accordance with Advisory Committee Bylaw 05-2021, the annual advisory committee committee and board reports are being presented to council for their information today. As you are aware, we did a large-scale recruitment of the advisory committees last year, and so you may notice that a lot of the work plan items that are there are perhaps a little bit less, involved than they would be under a normal year. The committees were not struck until mid 2024, so many of them were just getting going in 2024. However, we do anticipate the fact that the work plans will be a lot more fulsome in 2025 and beyond. So we're happy to take any questions that you may have.
Okay, any questions or comments from around the table? Okay, seeing none, the recommended motion is to receive this for information. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Adam, second by Councillor Todd. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on to 4.2, Report CS0525 regarding 2024-2027 Heritage Port Hope Advisory Committee and Accessibility Advisory Committee appointment. Does staff have anything further that they would like to add before council considers this report?
Madam Mayor, this is an administrative report being brought forward for council consideration in line with our appointment policy. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have with respect to the recruitment process.
Thank you. So the recommended motion is in fact listed on the agenda. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Darrell. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you very much to the volunteers to both of those committees for your service to the municipality. Moving on to item 4.3, Report ES0525 regarding 2024 annual performance reports for the Port Hope wastewater treatment plant and sewage collection system. Does staff have anything further that they would like to add before council considers the report? I see nobody turning on their mics for this, so any further comments or questions from around the horseshoe on this? Seeing none, the recommended motion is to receive this report, being the 2024 annual performance reports for the Port Hope wastewater treatment plant and sewage collection system. So can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Todd, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on then to item 4.4, Report PRC 0125 regarding program growth in parks, recreation, culture, and camp registration fees. Does staff have anything further that they would like to add before council considers this report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Eileen is here this evening. She's the one leading the team related to the operations and the impacts, so I'll let her speak to this report.
Thank you. Good evening. It's my pleasure to speak to you on this report. The report has two purposes. It's to report on the significant and sustained growth. Is that what happened? Yeah. Okay. How about now? Okay. The report has two purposes. The first is to report on the significant and sustained growth in parks, recreation, and culture programming and services, and the some of the operational changes that we have employed to address this growth. And the second purpose is to seek an adjustment to our day camp fee in order to implement that for a 2025 season. The growth that we have seen is in response to the population growth and change in our community. Some of the changes that we have seen include significant growth in all of our registrations, our day camp registrations, our memberships sold or renewed, our visits, either 55 plus or swimming or skating, our hours booked in the arena, on the ice, or on the floor, our pool hours booked, our rooms booked for rentals, meetings, birthday parties, and our admissions or visits not including 55 plus, such as skating or swimming. These numbers are significant and they're included in your report from the years 2023 to 2024. As we experience this growth, staff have employed several operational changes to address this. We consistently look at wait lists, compress, add new courses as required. Our primetime ice usage is at capacity currently, and we have extended that to a 4 o'clock start Monday to Friday. We are working to review the ice allocation policy along with other arena groups and our user groups in terms of looking at their challenges as well. We are investigating a resident first model for registration to be implemented towards the end of 2025 or the start of 2026. This change does require time in terms of testing the functionality of our software, as well as time to communicate the change to the community. We've employed several efficiencies in terms of our staff and scheduling, and we have added additional staff through the 2024 budget process. We've offered several workshops and information campaigns to our community to be rec ready as they approach registration days, to help reduce frustration on registration day, and to advise of wait lists and the opportunities to obtain classes after registration day. Specific to camp registration, our needs related to inclusion services have also increased. Inclusion services are provided when a child requires additional support through camp, either through one-on-one support or communication or training and strategies that we can provide through the family and through our staff. In 2024, on average, there were 10 children per week in camp who required additional support. And although program costs are typically covered through our fees and services, inclusion support costs exceed those. For this reason, we are recommending an adjustment to camp fees for 2025 from $171.07 to $182 per week, and an increase in the extended fees, this is before or after care, from $16.39 to $25 per child. These fees have been reviewed with our municipal comparators and other camp providers in the area and are found to be within the margins of what others are offering as well. And I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that report and update to council. Open it up for questions and comments. Councillor Todd.
Thanks very much for the report. I've got a question. Obviously, every year when we go through budgets, we're reminded that Port Hope is a service-rich community. We're also reminded that people want their taxes to remain low. In the report, I appreciate the fact that we're increasing user fees in order to offset some of this. There's suggestions throughout as well that it will partially assist, and so as we continue to review, do you foresee that any additional costs that are going to come through these programs will continue to be put towards user fees, or do you anticipate that somewhere down the road we're going to be looking at this as a budget item?
Yeah, I can take that. So we have done fee reviews internally over the last number of years. Our most recent one was coming out of the pandemic from a recovery standpoint. Historically, our fee reviews have been comparators. So what have our local neighboring communities and our identified municipal comparators been offering programs? It's challenging to be sure that we're comparing apples to apples. Our next consideration that I would like our team to work through, and it may require some internal resources, but also potentially external, is to confirm the level of subsidized amounts that are attributed to certain activity types. So a few communities have gone through the process in identifying a level of subsidy that that council approves. And then essentially we would be establishing what is the actual cost to be running that program. So right now we consider hard costs, so our staffing costs. When we're thinking through that cost recovery, it doesn't speak to our hydro needs in the facility and other aspects. So what we're working on internally is how to roll that out. We don't have the capacity to do that full review of all service areas, but this initial work from a day camp adjustment is really to maintain the level of service that we have in the past by increasing the fees. So it is passing the cost to the community, but it is also helping to offset the level of subsidy that is in place. So moving forward, I would like to establish a percentage of subsidy based on activity type, and we would roll that out by doing a review in specific areas as opposed to all services at once, because we don't have the capacity to do that. So I'm not sure if that fully answers your questions. I honestly didn't hear the last part of your question. It got quiet.
the last part of the question was, as this continues to, as costs continue to rise, do you foresee that we will always be passing stuff on to users, or whether or not it'll become budget items? And I guess where I'm heading with this is, are we going to get to a place where we're just going to have to cap services and say this is actually all we can afford at this point?
I think it's going to be a mixture of both. In some sense, we have capped our services already in day camp related to the number of spaces that we can permit. And that's not only based on the fee that is part of the registration, it's also related to the actual space usage, some of the requirements from ratios. So if we think about that in the broader sense for aquatics, as an example, it's very similar. We have limitations of how many people we can put in the pool at one time, and we have limitations about how many programs we can offer at certain times. So I think it's a mixture of both. I think by targeting, again, the level of subsidy that, seeking council's direction, I think that will help identify, because we'll be at a max for number of participants, and that level of subsidy would be applicable to that max. So I think to answer the question, it's a little bit of both, and it's not an exact science. I will say that as well.
So I'm just going to go around this way, and I'm just going to quickly follow up with Councillor Attridge's question around budgets and level of service that we can be providing. So I really appreciate your answer to the question, but I'm wondering if we are looking at how the municipality of Port Hope performs in relation to other comparable municipalities in terms of, say, what we are offering in the parks and recreation lines. And I know that in certain instances we're capped in terms of what we're able to offer because the facilities dictate that. But have we actually ever looked at how much we are offering for PRC compared to municipalities of a similar size?
So we have kind of anecdotally completed that. From my chair, Port Hope is looked to as a leader in recreation based on the size of our community. In the sense of having hard data to identify that, we need to work towards that. So even the example of the resident first registration concept, we need to be able to train our team on how to produce the data and analyze that. So we haven't gone through the exercise that you've described as being able to report on that, but we have a sense based on the size of our community that we do offer a significant number of programs and a variety of program types. I think, again, with some of the considerations for the pool specifically, the Jack Burger Sports Complex was the only therapy pool in Northumberland County up until December when Trent Hills opened their new facility. So there are other impacts of the types of facilities that Port Hope is able to offer and the types of programming in those facilities.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So I think the question you asked and the answer was kind of leading to where I was going about residents first. I have been getting those comments that our local residents aren't getting into some of these programs. And to Councillor Todd's point, I don't know if as a council we need to make that sort of tough love decision at some point and say that we have the services that are meeting the demands of our community, because as long as we continue to build it, they're going to come here. And we really shouldn't be carrying that weight for all municipalities in the area. So you answered sort of the question I was going to ask, is of these numbers, what percentage are local within our municipality and how many of them are coming from outside municipalities?
So again, to work through identifying the details of how we can run those reports, the system is able to do it, but our team isn't trained on doing that. Also, Resident First has an implication of this. Our recreation system manages that based on postal code. So, you could have a Port Hope address and not be a Port Hope taxpayer. So we need to work through that. Our general sense, again, this is based on the high level understanding of who is using and participating in programs is that it's very different based on program type. So we know our pool users are a mix of Northumberland County residents based on the fact that I had mentioned just in the previous comment. Day camp is probably very similar, that it would be a high mix. Our 55 plus programming, I would say a significant percentage would be Port Hope residents. But with the former Ruth Clark Activity Center, there was no restriction on membership. So kind of identifying that people are coming and participating in programs from a social standpoint, they're bringing their friends to the programs, which is, what the intent of social interaction of those activities are. So I can't identify the hard data, but we are working towards that as we're doing the review and analysis for that consideration for Resident First.
Thank you, and thank you for that. And I'm a data person, and I think there is also value in looking at what programs, when you get that data, what is a significant cost as far as staffing needs, and what could take outside, such as seniors. They play cards or whatever. It doesn't take a lot more staff time as compared to a small children's group, which take more staff. So taking that extra level of data might be helpful as well.
Any other questions or comments from around the table? Councillor Adam.
Sure. So I don't have a question. I just do have a comment, and noticing the increase in all the numbers. I've had the opportunity to read this report multiple times through the PRC advisory as well. And it is so nice to see all this growth, and it is a testament to the staff and how hard they work, because a lot of this growth is based off of word of mouth, that people come to our different facilities and use our programs, and they enjoy it, and they go back and they get a friend and they bring that, and this growth is quite incredible, and I thank the team for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So the recommended motion for this report is listed on the agenda. Can I ask for a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Darrell. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on to report 4.5, PS 0425, regarding encroachment bylaw. Does staff have anything that they would like to add before council considers where we're at with this report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So with relation to this report, what we are seeking at this time is to ask for a motion to defer. We would like some additional time for staff to review the bylaw and see if there are any necessary changes that might be required before bringing it back. So we would ask that it be deferred until the next committee of the whole meeting to just allow us for that extra time.
Thank you for that update. And I do believe that we have a motion on the table from the Deputy Mayor in regards to this.
Yes, thank you. So thank you for the request. So I'd like to put a motion that report PS-04-25 be deferred to the Committee of the Whole meeting of April 1st, 2025, and that staff be directed to complete a fulsome review of the terms identified in the draft encroachment bylaw attachment 1 to determine if any further changes are necessary, and that a revised encroachment bylaw be brought forward for council consideration following staff review.
Thank you for that. So that motion is on the table. Can I get a seconder for it? Seconded by Councillor Todd. Any further discussion on the matter? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Moving on to the next item, 4.6, report DS 0225 regarding recommendation report on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZBO 124 276 to 282 Victoria Street North. And I'm assuming staff has something more that they would like to add before we consider the report.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, Council. So as mentioned, this is for rezoning application, file number ZB01-24, affecting lands municipally addressed 276 through to 282 Victoria Street North. The purpose of the ZBA application or zoning bylaw amendment application is to rezone the subject lands to a site-specific high-density residential zone with an H8 holding provision to allow for the development of 74 apartment units in 2 3-story apartment buildings. It is the opinion of planning staff that the proposal is consistent with the provincial planning statement, conforms to the Northumberland County official plan, and conforms to the municipality's official plan. And staff are therefore recommending approval for the zoning bylaw amendment application. With that said, if there are any questions from yourself, Madam Mayor, Council, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you, and I'm wondering if the representative, Mr. Conti, has anything to add to the staff report as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. So we support the recommendation in the staff report. We feel the proposal meets all the appropriate planning requirements and policy documents, and it's an appropriate development for the site. It will add 74 residential units to the municipality. And it has a lot of benefits in meeting a number of policy objectives. So we urge the committee to approve it and adopt the staff's recommendation. I know that the issue of affordable housing and providing affordable units has been a matter of concern to the municipality. So I'd just like to say that the client is committed to looking at providing affordable units when the proposal gets to the site plan stage. And if the proposal goes forward as planned with 74 apartment units, they expect that they can provide a few affordable units, but they're not committing at this time. They want the bylaw amendment to go through, and then at site plan stage, they'll make a final determination. So that's where the project stands. We hope the committee can support it and approve the bylaw amendment tonight.
So just for clarification, you're making a commitment to potentially make a commitment once the process gets further along.
I think that's accurate, yes.
Thank you. Any further questions of either staff or of Mr. Conti on this? Questions, comments?
So I'll make a comment because I think it's important to acknowledge the petition. There was a lot of effort that was put into the petition, and I know that there are a lot of people who are concerned. I read that very carefully. I read the follow-up that was provided, answering all the questions that came out of the public meeting. I studied the site plan very, very closely, got out my little measuring tools and so on. And I think what's important to acknowledge is that housing, medium density, I believe, is approved there up to 3 stories. And when I looked at this, the setback from the south property lines is almost 19 meters. And if you think of last time you drove through Bowmanville or whatever, and you see those 3-story townhouses, they're not set back very far from the property lines to the properties next to them. So technically, those houses could have a 3-story building 7 meters approximately from their backyards. So I think visualizing this is difficult for somebody who doesn't really visualize exactly what is being proposed there. So I looked around in our own community for a comparable building, and using my primitive tools, it looked like these buildings are about 60 meters by 20. And the closest building I could find is the Comfort Inn, which was 75 by 20, 3 stories plus a roof. So that's a comparable building for anybody out there who's interested in knowing exactly what's being proposed there. And, you know, I understand not wanting this change and not wanting a building in your backyard, but we can't stop development from going there. And I think that this is a proposal that sets back housing as far as possible from the current houses and is the most condensed form on that lot. So I understand the community's feelings, but I think that this is the best option for that site.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for that comment and that feedback. Councillor Adam.
Thank you. So I just want to ask you a question about the affordable housing, and I know that they're looking at the non-commitment, commitment, whatever. Even the More Homes Built Faster Act of 2022 prioritizes affordable housing. Why can't they make a commitment even on a small amount? And what is a few? Just your mic again. Sorry. Thank you.
When the project was first proposed, they were planning to make all units affordable. And I think it was just really a matter of working through the numbers, looking at the sorts of loans, grant systems available from different levels of government, and then seeing what was reasonable on the site for the project to go forward. So there are different options in terms of the way the project can go forward, and the client is just looking at those, and if it goes forward in the way it's proposed now, there are some affordable units it looks like that they will be able to provide. So, you know, it's the bylaw, the zoning is a bit separate. I know that's, you know, the requirement for affordable units is in the PPS, provincial planning statement, and other policy documents, but zoning really deals with, you know, the built form, setbacks, standards, and that's really what we're dealing with tonight. So even if we gave you a commitment tonight, we want to be act in good faith, right, and be reasonable with what we tell you. Even if we were able to give you a commitment tonight, it wouldn't necessarily hold up by the time the development proceeded. So we're being a little bit hesitant and trying to be honest with council.
Understandable. Thank you.
Thank you for raising that, Councillor Adam, and you know that we will continue to have conversations with you as we go through the process on this exact issue, and when the time is right to get something more firm in place. Councillor Todd? Councillor Darrell? Okay. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
The recommended motion is listed on the agenda for this report. Can I get a mover and seconder on it? Moved by Councillor Todd. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Darrell. Any further discussion or conversation on the matter? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is passed. Moving on to item number 5, notice of motions. There are currently no notices of motion on the agenda for this evening. Moving on to updates and new business, the provincial election, starting with that item. On behalf of the municipality of Port Hope, I extend congratulations to MPP David Puccini on his re-election as the representative for Northumberland Peterborough South. We look forward to continuing our collaboration on key community priorities, including infrastructure investments and affordability initiatives to support a thriving Port Hope. Second item is Youth Councillor to Port Hope Council. The municipality is currently seeking any youth who are between the ages of 13 to 17 for appointment as Youth Councillor to the municipality of Port Hope. The Youth Councillor would advocate for and on behalf of the youth of the municipality. And for more information, please visit www.porthope.com/careers. Another update is in regards to the Walton Street tender. I'm pleased to share that Bain Construction has been awarded the contract for the third and final phase of the Walton Street reconstruction project. Bain Construction, a well-established company in Northumberland County, was selected following a fair and competitive tender process. Phase 3 will focus on replacing underground infrastructure and fully reconstructing Walton Street between Cavan and Pine Streets. Our staff are now working with the contractor to finalize the schedule, and we'll share more details as they become available. To keep our community informed, we're planning a public information session this spring. I encourage residents and businesses alike to attend and stay up to date through our website and social media channels. This project is a key investment in our downtown, and I appreciate everyone's patience as we again enter into another phase of reconstruction work. And for more information, of course, please visit porthope.ca. And finally, I want to get just a brief update from the county on the fire at Golden Plough Lodge on Saturday evening. Many of you have probably heard about the fire that occurred on, it started Saturday afternoon. There were various reports out in the media which were not particularly accurate, so I'm here just to give a very accurate update on what has transpired. I want to start by first acknowledging the fast action of the staff of the Golden Plough Lodge and all the first responders who came to the scene promptly and acted in quite extraordinary and heroic ways. We know that to date, a number of the residents of Golden Plough Lodge were displaced as a result of the fire, not directly because of the fire itself, but water damage and smoke damage as well to the building. I'm happy to report that all those residences have been in fact accommodated within the building. And I know that the public had questions about what would happen in an event that, say, the damage was more extensive and more residents would be displaced as a result of this kind of incident. And there is an emergency preparedness plan in place for such an incident. So just to reassure the public that that there are very, very concrete actions that would be taken in this kind of instance. God forbid it should happen ever again in the future. But again, I think that the way in which this situation's been handled was really exemplary, and we anticipate that in the coming weeks that everything will be restored in place with the Golden Plough Lodge, and of course looking forward to seeing the new building open as quickly as possible. And most importantly, nobody was hospitalized and there were no lives lost. So thank you again to all the first responders. And very finally, congratulations to our Deputy Mayor, Mink, for being reelected as chair of the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority. This is her second term as chair, and we are very proud and pleased with her accomplishments on this very important board. Are there any other updates that any members of council would okay, we've got a couple here. Councillor Todd.
Thank you very much. Last Friday, the Intermunicipal Task Force on Housing and Homelessness held an event where we had members and stakeholders from a variety of areas, from builders, land use planners, building inspectors, financiers, real estate agents, politicians. About 50 people came together to discuss what are the friction points around building housing and affordable housing at the lower tiers, and how do we reduce some of those friction points. It was a really wonderful day. We got a lot of great feedback from all stakeholders on the cooperation and the collaboration around the tables, and a better understanding of what it is that's standing in our way of being able to develop housing and affordable housing at the lower tiers. There'll be more coming as we finalize the report. And from the day, it'll basically have for us a list of to-dos, or the things that we can be doing at this level of government to clear the way to make some of those projects faster and more fruitful. So more to come, but certainly thank you to everyone who attended. It was a really wonderful day.
And thank you very much to the Intermunicipal Task Force for taking this initiative and creating this event for this kind of conversation to happen, which is so pressing and so important for all of our communities. Any other updates from the council table? Yes, Councillor Adam.
Thank you. So first off, I'm going to give a big thank you to our Port Hope Panthers for an incredible season. They were defeated in the first round of the playoffs. So season's over, but they played well and they represented Port Hope quite well. Secondly, Civic Awards. There's 2 days left to submit nominations for Civic Awards. If you have somebody and you've been waiting on submitting it to the last second to make us work hard on the last couple minutes, great, thank you, appreciate it. Get those in by Thursday. And then one quick other thing. It's not really new business or anything, but just would like to wish our mayor a happy birthday.
Thank you. That was very sneaky, Councillor Adam. Okay, it's now time for our question period. Please remember the purpose of question period is to make inquiries of council members related to matters of municipal business. Please note that this is not meant to be an avenue to ask questions to staff. If you have questions specifically for your council members, you can ask them now. I also want to highlight that if your questions are operational in nature, they may be best answered by a member of staff following the meeting. Contact information for all our directors and senior staff are, as always, available at the door. And we would be happy to pass on your questions to those folks. So if you do have a questions, please step up and identify your name and ensure the purple button is on, please.
Ed White, Mill Street. I was wondering if you could help me here. I don't quite understand and I want to get it right. Do we have a bylaw about new builds and 25% affordable housing rates? If we do, does that apply to every building, like a subdivision, 25%, an apartment building, 25, like if we have a bylaw that says 25%, does it apply everywhere, or is it selective, or is it even got any teeth? You know, like I don't understand that. I read on a letter over the weekend from the people that are proposing this apartment building on Victoria Street, that they're looking at the affordable housing. Like, I'm not sure what that even means. Like, it's either a rule or there isn't a rule. Can you help me with that?
That's a really good question, Mr. White. And I think that there are different ways of approaching this depending on whether or not we're talking about projects that might be developed on municipal land versus projects that are developed on private property. As you probably know, because we've talked about it at this table previously, is that we have had some success collaborating with developers coming into the community, at least since this council started, in negotiating affordable units for any new development. But when we talk about new developments on private property, there is nothing that necessitates any kind of affordable units being developed.
Okay, does that mean that if somebody wants to turn a basement area into another apartment or some such thing, and I think again, I want to get it right, but I think, isn't there some kind of rule about a house not being able to rent to people that aren't related or something like that? Like, because doesn't that turn it into a rooming house or something like that? Is there some kind of rule about that?
Mr. White, I'm not familiar with what you're referring to. I know that there are many different rules and regulations around secondary units that are now in place. But for this particular question, I could take that back and make sure you get a fulsome response.
Okay, I just want to get it right. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for raising those issues.
Hi, my name is Samantha Morton. I live at 17 Freeman Drive. I have several questions. I'm going to start on the topic of the Victoria Street development. So just to understand, under the current residential 3 bylaw, are they able to move forward with their building? Or do they need this residential 4 rezoning to do that?
I think, as you heard in the staff report this evening, that it meets all of our bylaw requirements.
Sorry. The proposed building they want to build, can they build it under the current residential 3? Or do they need residential 4 to build the plan they've presented?
That's a technical question. I'm going to have to make sure that I refer this to staff because I don't want to make a mistake on this.
I can answer that question. So to construct an apartment building on the subject property, they would need a rezoning to the residential 4 zoning that was proposed and considered this evening. That's correct.
All right, thank you. In regards to the same development, does council have any plans in terms of addressing infrastructure concerns prior to development?
As I understand it, council does not address infrastructure concerns. Staff addresses infrastructure considerations and concerns and brings it forward to council for consideration. And that's part of the process of any development in the community. So nothing moves forward without adequate infrastructure being in place and satisfying all of the requirements for any kind of build.
Okay. I'd like to just make a comment about the fact that adding this many people to that area of road as a bus driver who drives through there on the daily at the peak times of day, this will have a drastic impact on that street, on the intersection of Victoria and Jocelyn. It is already difficult to move through there at those peak times, and adding 74 units just north of that will affect that. And I do believe that whether that is council's call or develop staffing, there should be something in place that governs that we have the proper infrastructure to support the housing that's being built, and that we're not throwing up like houses nearly 750, 74 units without adding any sort of way to control that traffic.
Thank you for that comment.
Yes.
And we will, obviously, staff is here and
Yeah.
hearing your comment. Thank you and your feedback.
I'm done with that topic now. On the topic of the proposed encroachment bylaws, I guess this is also more of a comment in terms of like you are considering them. I'd like to just state that I do have concerns after reading through them that there are some things in these bylaws as well as the bylaws placed into effect last week. Was it last week? Or the week before, that can have very serious consequences to residents that I'm not sure have been fully thought out. For instance, there's nothing that in the bylaws that dictate that when a resident has received an expense. So let's say in terms of the snow, I guess we're off the top of encroachment, but let's say the municipality has done work on a property owner's behalf as lined out in these new bylaws. You're able to, which understandably, recoup the costs. However, in these bylaws, there's nothing that says that you have to give residents the opportunity to pay those costs prior to them being placed on our tax roll. Doing so puts a lien on our properties. That affects our credit scores. It puts our houses at risk by doing so. I believe we should have the opportunity to pay those fees prior to, but the bylaws that have been enacted do not give residents, or there's nothing that outlines that opportunity has to be provided.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to sort of assume that that was a bit of a question about whether or not there is an opportunity to respond to some of those changes. And to be fair, we have deferred the matter, the report that you might,
yes,
to our next,
encouragement.
yes. But in terms of this issue, if you had been here when the matter was presented by staff, there were great assurances made that staff would work with residents to ensure that there would be a reasonable resolution. It's not going to be immediately punitive. And so that is always the first order of how things are dealt with residents.
Right. It's great to move forward in good faith. However, a commitment to commit doesn't guarantee anything. Just because everyone's saying we're going to act in good faith doesn't mean that will necessarily happen. There should be something in place to protect residents in writing? Like, why am I not given the opportunity to pay costs incurred prior to them being put on my tax roll? A lien on my property for, I don't know, maybe $100. Like,
I will make sure that we pass that on to the Director of Protective Services and the appropriate bylaw personnel. But we do, as a matter of course, have a lot of faith in our municipal staff. And so when they make a public statement, we do hold them into account for that information.
okay, I understand. Also, so in the bylaws enacted last week, what did we actually call them? Sorry, they are the municipal maintenance bylaws that replace the snow and ice removal bylaws. Does council feel that the new bylaws are an appropriate replacement for the old bylaws? Has anything been neglected?
Well, obviously we do, because we voted to support those changes.
Okay. I have a hard time understanding how we got from snow and ice removal bylaws to maintenance bylaws, most of which, or more than half, have nothing to do with snow and ice removal. Maybe it's just the wording on public forums where you say, we've updated the snow and ice removal bylaws, but when you actually read them, council has actually removed any outlines as to what the municipality is responsible for, or the bylaws, sorry, maybe not council. The bylaws remove from the old bylaws. Now, I had to call around to get a copy of the 5297 because they were gone from the website. But the old bylaws outline things that the municipality is responsible for in terms of road clearing and their responsibilities. These new bylaws do not contain any of those same standards.
Again, thank you for that feedback and comment, and I'll make sure that those get passed on to the staff member responsible, and more importantly, that they will get back to you with an answer.
Also, in these new bylaws, interest is being charged starting 1 month from the cost incurred. I, as a resident, may not know that a cost has been incurred on my property. I could think that my neighbor has cleaned my sidewalk or whatever. What is the procedures, again, not outlined in the bylaw, to notify me that you've incurred a cost and I'm responsible for it? How am I to be notified, again, before that cost is put onto my tax roll? Or it starts incurring interest at 30 days, but I've potentially have not even been notified yet, right? So you've sent a company, that cost is incurred on day one. You don't even have their invoice yet. You've not given me an invoice. And yet at 30 days, I might even not have an invoice, but I'm being charged interest. Can we clarify?
Yes, I believe I see the Director of Corporate Services taking the mic.
I think I was just going to lean in and suggest, unfortunately, we don't have our Director of Protective Services here tonight, who's responsible for enforcement. Some of the questions you've asked are finance-based as well. I understand the concern. I think those are almost entirely addressed by officer discretion and working towards resolution with homeowners first and foremost. I'm just going to suggest that we can connect you with our Director of Protective Services or our Supervisor of bylaw enforcement, who will be able to address all of these concerns. There's a number of them we've noted for tonight, but I'm not sure council is going to be able to satisfy the real technical operating questions here this evening.
Fair enough.
But we have noted your questions and concerns, and we will make sure they're very much operational in nature, and that is not what council typically would have the detailed information on, but we will get you the detailed response back from the staff that is responsible and oversees these issues. And we will make sure that we get your contact information.
Thank you. In regards to bylaw or boulevards, are we able to define where the boulevard ends? In the new bylaws, both the encroachment and the ones maintenance, as of last week, they state that a street line to the curb may or may not include a sidewalk, but there's nothing that tells me where my property ends. Like, how am I supposed to know where my property ends and the boulevard begins.
So I would say same as the answer to your previous questions, is that is a very technical question, and we'll make sure that the
But when
staff
we're defining things,
is
so
able to respond back and give you some very detailed response to it.
So when you're putting definitions in bylaws, these are the things that, like, that's why I'm coming about the bylaws you're enacting, is because these are definitions that you've included that are unclear. It's hard to be okay with being able to be fined penalties. If I have a bench, like I have a bench in my front yard that I typically in the warmer weather move closer to the curb because I have a large tree and I live in an elderly neighborhood, I encourage my neighbors to sit on the bench. I encourage, I've seen construction workers come from down the street to come sit on my bench, and I love it. However, I'm now worried that because if my bench is on the boulevard, you guys can come and take it away, get rid of it, and charge me for the cost and put it as a lien on my house.
Thank you for bringing these concerns forward. I know that at this council table, we have talked about trying to make sure that the language that we're using in reports and motions and in bylaws is as accessible and plain language as possible. So we'll take forward your comments. We will ensure, again, that the authors of the bylaw are aware, and that we will make sure that staff have a conversation with you about all the issues that are concerning you to make sure that you do have clarity.
Last point about bylaw or boulevard, sorry, is that, again, it's just very unclear. Some of the new bylaws really imply that the council is concerned, or the municipality is concerned about their responsibility and legal implications. Meanwhile, other bylaws firmly put those responsibilities onto the residents. So it is quite confusing as to who is responsible for the bylaws and what exactly we're responsible or liable for.
Thank you, and we'll make a note of that last point and question as well, and we will get back to you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing your frustrations, and thank you for asking some very important questions to us.
Thank you.
Any other further questions from the audience? And I failed to ask if there were any questions around the table from any of my fellow councillors this evening. Okay. Seeing none, and we don't have media, still no media, hoping for media, but this brings us to item number 8, adjournment. This concludes our business to be covered on today's agenda, and I'm in a position to adjourn the meeting. Committee of the Whole is adjourned at 7:27 p.m. Thank you.